the impact of our presence in a situation. One of them was conducted in the early 1990s by a Russian scientist named Vladimir Photons. And what he did is that he was conducting an experiment to see if human DNA had an effect on the world around us. How many of you are familiar with this experiment? Okay. I know some of you are not, and it's important that you hear this, but I will make it the shorter story so that for those of you who already know about this experiment. But he started by creating vacuum in a glass tube. And then he measured the photons, which are tiny vibrating particles of light. And he was able to examine that they were just randomly scattered throughout the tube. There seemed to be no pattern. There seemed to be no predictable way that they were behaving. But then he placed human DNA inside that tube. And the photons began to line up. They abandoned their random pattern, and they aligned themselves along the axis of the DNA. Is that amazing?
Harmony.
It is harmony.
Came in harmony.
But that harmony could have gone two ways. The DNA could have just dissolved into chaos, like the photons, you see? But the photons actually responded to the human DNA. Now, the human DNA had an advantage over the photons, and here's what it was. The human DNA was programmed by the heart. We have actually discovered that our emotional state determines the lengthening and the shortening of our strands of DNA. We have actually learned through clinical experiments that when a person is going through a stressful or negative emotion, the strands of DNA shorten. They tighten up. They're closed. We also know that when people are in a state of a positive emotion, whether it's just pleasantness leading up to exhilaration, or most especially when they are in a state of unconditional compassion, the DNA lengthens to the maximum. It also does something else. It begins to open the DNA has little tentacles on the side that are like receptors to information, and it makes itself open to receiving information. It also does something else. There are little gateways within the strands of DNA. Little gateway, when it opens, these little gateways open, which is beginning to suggest that not only is it sending information, but it is open to receiving information. Now, interesting is that the DNA does not open itself to receive information when things are negative. Do you see how this is a protective thing with life? It just shuts down. Well, that's bad enough that it shuts down because we know what stress does to us, right? And we know what negative emotions do to us. And actually, when DNA shuts down, we tend to enter this hypnotic state, this hypnotic trance that helps to perpetuate negative behavior. But the one thing that doesn't happen is DNA is not transformed in a negative state. It goes into a frozen state. It goes into a kind of suspended state where evolution is not occurring. So if you want to slow down evolution, put people in a state of fear. Got it? If you want to slow down evolution, make sure they're watching crime dramas and horror movies. Make sure that they're engaging in stressful events. It will slow evolution down because it's a protective mechanism that God, the universe, and life, in its great wisdom, has given you so that you will not adapt to the negative. Remember, you are not negative. Okay, there's more proof right there. See, I want you to really have this hardcore, solid solid proof